Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. TIE TMS equips brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history coverage on a single screen. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, visit tiesoftware.com/battlestation. Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we're covering all things new TMSs. And don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter, on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we welcome back the one and only Walter Mitch Mitchell, CEO at TIE TMS. Welcome back to the show, Mitch.
Thanks for having me, Mary. It's always a pleasure to be on the show.
I am excited about today because this is something we've kind of touched on a little bit in the past, but we haven't come back to it in a while. And as we know, there's a lot of changes in the TMS world. There are what seems to be new innovations that a couple years later just become table stakes. So, without further ado, what are some common signs or indicators that like if a company says, oh hey, we're having this kind of problem all the time, what are some of those signs and indicators that suggest it's time for a new TMS?
Yeah, I think this is actually the hardest part of the whole TMS transition anyway, is deciding when it's time to transition is really a core to the business. And what happens, I think, typically is we get caught up in our day to day. We get caught up in the work that we're doing all the time, and we don't stop and look and say, are our processes good? Are the processes and the work that we're doing good for the business? What are the business objectives that we want to be accomplishing, and where are we getting held up? So I think this ties into that identifying the problem being the most important part. And what it requires is for us to take a step back from our business, take a look and say, okay, what are my real business objectives? What am I really trying to accomplish with the business? Is my technology supporting that or not? And I got a little example here that fell in on my plate, which uh, is I find kind of ironic because my job is TMS, right? And so we help companies do this all the time. But I was just on a call and we were reviewing some of our HR software, and we were talking to a new vendor who potentially could replace our current product. And when we were doing that, they were mentioning some things and some different pieces of functionality that they offer. And I was like, oh, wow, I hadn't even considered that we should be doing that. And it's because, our company's been growing, and when we were smaller, I didn't need some of those things. But as we've grown, the technology needs on that side of the business have changed. And so where I realized as I was listening to them, I was like, I I really need to do this for our own product in an area where I maybe didn't think it was holding us back, but it potentially is. And so that's something that I think all freight brokers need to be doing, and all of us that are running businesses and using technology to facilitate our business, we should be looking at, like, where is our technology holding us back? Is our growth slower than we want it to be? Are we evaluating how technology is helping us achieve our goals or not?
I think that's kind of almost a very timely kind of analogy and, a topic to bring up because, we saw a bunch of new entrants of freight brokers in 2020, 2021 that now have had explosive growth and then have come back down and or maybe are just trying to manage some sustainable growth. And so I think that this is kind of like a new thing that a lot of people are having to deal with, which is, okay, well, the original TMS I had was great when it was maybe 10 people, but now that we're 15, 20, 30 or more, or maybe multiple locations, or maybe, we've done some acquisitions or whatever has it. I think that this is, that's something that, oh, well, just because it worked when we were a company of 10 to 12 people doesn't mean that it's still right for us now as a slightly larger company or hopefully growing to become a larger company.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we have to reconsider, even if we are using the same TMS, how are we using the same TMS as we grow and as our business changes? And it doesn't even have to be growth. It could also be the opposite. If our business is shrinking, we maybe need to reevaluate some of the processes we had and some of the technologies that we were using. But then also, we're in an evolving time right now, especially for the full truckload freight space. There's so many new products and important tools out there that are helping us be better at compliance and better at finding the right carrier to cover a load, better at tracking shipments. These things are changing a lot. And what worked for us 5 years ago probably isn't what should be working for us today. And one of the phrases I like to use is especially for our business is what got us to here doesn't get us to there. And and if you apply that to your own business, like what has gotten me to here has been great, but I don't have to use that just because it got me to here. The next phase of our business evolution, the next phase of what we're trying to do and grow into and achieve may require some different tools and some changes.
I think that kind of comes back to something that we've talked about a lot, which is that, focus on what you're good at, on what your core strengths are. And if you're, a muffin manufacturer and you're focusing on making the most delicious muffins or different types of muffins, like you don't need to sit there and be bogged down by your HR software, your logistics software. You don't need to be sit there and bogged down by all of that because that's not core to your business. So if your technology is kind of getting in the way of you being able to be the best muffin maker out there, then I think that that's when it's something that you need to really sit down and go, okay, we have a problem here. Like we need to have some sort of solution because it's taking away from the main core thing of our business of what we're good at. And I think that that's something that people kind of get lost in the trenches of sometimes.
That is so well said. And yeah, we like to use core versus context, right? Is the make sure you know what your core business is and focus on it. And I love that, Mary. It's the right way for us all to be thinking. And that's where we have to really take a step back sometimes. Make sure that we're running our business, not letting our business run us, right? Make sure that we're thinking about what are we really here to achieve, and remember those key points so that we aren't letting technology hold us back, or we're not letting some other processes hold us back, or we're not letting our team hold us back.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've talked about in like the age old buy versus build your software debate. And it's, focus on what you're good at, focus on what you're known for. And that goes into, like you said, with any kind of other thing that you're working on, find those experts and say, okay, well, you're an expert, you're a professional in this, so I'm gonna hand this over to you because I'm not an expert in it and I don't need to become an expert in it because it's just not part of my business.
Exactly right. Yep. Focus on what we're good at.
So kind of, so if I'm a shipper and I say, okay, let's run with the muffin analogy because honestly muffins are delicious. So if I'm a muffin manufacturer and I say, okay, well my TMS is holding me down, I'm having warehouse delays, I'm having product delays because I can't get goods here to make the muffins and can't get trucks to send them out. How do I kind of know when I'm out there shopping what is new cutting edge technology and what is honestly just table stakes at this point in time? Because things that were, new and cool and kind of unique to a TMS 5 to 10 years ago is now just kind of a table stakes that everybody has. So kind of how do I know what how do I know what features are just table stakes at this point in time versus, those that are continuously innovating?
Yeah, I think it's important to separate those two things a little bit in the not letting the technology decisions drive the business. And what I mean by that is we're going on to the muffin analogy here is that do I need like AI ingredients to build my muffin, or to help me design the recipe for that muffin? Or do I really need to focus on, in the case of a freight company, delivering the muffins, right? And so I think it's important to not let the innovation component of technology cloud the business need. And a good technology provider is going to be talking to you in context of the business need. So AI is probably the best example of that right now because I don't think you can turn anywhere near a technology business and not hear AI, right? Um, I was just watching a Google keynote for the Google I/O sessions 2 days ago, and they actually were making fun of themselves, and they counted at the end how many times they said AI, and in 1 hour it was 121.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, everything they're doing is AI,
Yeah.
right? And that's great. This isn't a bad thing because this is innovation. It's the direction that technology is moving. Like there's a lot of really good things that come from it. But the important part isn't whether or not your TMS provider or the technology you're using is using AI, nobody really cares. You shouldn't care as a freight company whether or not AI is being used. What you should care about is, are the business challenges being solved in an effective way? Now, if you're using AI to do that, even better. So now we're at least using modern technology to solve the problems in a good way. That's something we should care about, not necessarily is AI being implemented. Like that's not the checkbox we want on our list of requirements for a TMS. What we want is, how does my TMS support my email? How does my TMS support document processing for PODs? Because that's something my team spends forever dealing with. Now, there's some great answers with AI. So if your TMS is supporting an AI document processor, that's really good. There's a lot of cool things that come from that, but you're solving the business problem first of, how do I ingest documents? How do I recover documents from my carriers? And how do I send those out to my customers? That's the important part. So let's focus on those questions and let the innovation and let the technology support it.
That really kind of brings up the whole making sure you're anyone that you're partnered with. So, like, if I'm a 3PL and I have a bunch of muffin suppliers, a bunch of muffin shippers. I have a problem, getting signed BOLs back or getting proof of deliveries back so I can pay my carriers faster. Or I have a hard time getting my carriers set up so it flows through the system where they can get paid quickly. I think that that goes back to something that we've said countless times of just make sure that you're working with someone that is as invested in your goals and your business as you are, because if I'm a 3PL and I just go, okay, I need a new TMS, what can let me just go out there and see what it is. And I come across a rep that's saying, oh, we have AI this, AI that, and look at all this cool, flashy technology, but they don't actually stop and listen to what problems you're facing. I think that that's kind of a good indicator that that might not be the right solution for you, because if you truly do want someone that feels like a partner and that will listen, and I'm not saying they have to build a completely custom, like a custom system for you, but knowing where your areas are and saying, okay, well, you're having a problem getting signed point of or PODs back. You're having a hard time getting those back and updated into the system because you have to get the emails and then download them and then upload them and save them. And you have to do these 10 other steps that literally take someone all day just to go through one inbox of PODs. I think that that's when it's like, oh no, we have this system. It just so happens to involve some of the more cutting edge technology and some of the newer things out there, but at the end of the day, it's going to solve your problem. And I think that is more important than just someone saying like, oh yeah, we've used all this cool machine learning AI technology.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the implementation. Your technology partner should care about the implementation and they should be pushing that forward. And that's what can help make them a good partner to you, is that they care about it and that they're doing what they're good at, which is implementing the modern technologies to help you move along. But you brought up another good point in there too, of kind of that specialization. Like, is your technology provider really focused on what you guys do and focused on your business? And we run into that, like, for example, there's some really big ERP systems out there that have freight management components to them, but they're just not as effective at running a TMS as some of the more specialized products, right? And so if you are a freight broker, then you should use software for freight brokers, because that's where you're going to get the efficiency. And what you'll see with it is the focus will be that they're using technology to implement solutions that help your team be great at what they do. And in today's technology environment where it's so much easier to make connections between technology platforms, using a product like, for example, a good place that we see this a lot is separating the TMSs that you use for an asset side of your business from the freight brokerage side. And one of the things that I like to bring up in this is that typically when we see a company that has an asset business and a freight brokerage, none of the employees work on both sides of that business. They're almost always completely separate. Now, if your employees are completely separate, that's probably because they're doing completely different jobs. And they really are. Asset businesses are very different from brokerages. So allowing them to run separately and allowing them to use tools that are specialized to what they do makes so much sense. And it just gives you that extra level of of granularity and of operational excellence.
I think that's something that you brought up with if you have an ERP system that just so happens to have a freight management tool, that might work, but it's not necessarily going to be the best solution, because just because it works doesn't necessarily mean that you should use it. Kind of like when you go to fix something in your house and you just put a bunch of duct tape around it and you're like, well, it works. And you're like, yeah, but it doesn't work well.
Exactly. And it's different, right? Like 15, 20 years ago, we kind of needed the one system that could do everything because it was so hard to connect. But today, the connections are so much easier and so much more capable that we can all do this in a little more out of the box way. And so, if you did have a separation of your freight business from the asset business and they're connecting to your accounting management platform, like that's very doable and would add value to the organization rather than hinder it.
100%. And that kind of goes into the next question that I had for you, which is kind of how do you, if as someone that would be going through a TMS upgrade or a change or something like that, what are some of those steps you need to take beforehand to make sure that it's going to be a smooth transition from maybe your old legacy system to the new one? Or is there any kind of preparation or like kind of key things that you're like, okay, if you do these handful of steps, more often than not, it'll result in an extremely positive switch versus the inevitable headache nightmare that comes with switching TMSs?
Yeah, the that's a great question and one that comes up very often, right? In that it's a little scary, it's a little daunting to change something like your TMS. It's a big process. It's like getting a new computer too, right? Like you change everything, going from like a PC to a Mac, right? It's a completely different world. Um, and that's what happens when you switch to a different TMS. But it's not so bad if you take it in the right steps. And one of the key things is setting proper expectations for yourself and for your team, preparing yourself for the fact that we're going to do things differently. And so one of the things that I think is really key to this is preparing and saying like, okay, well, this is what I do today, but when I switch to the new TMS, I'm going to do some of those things differently and make sure your team understands that. And then on top of that, the very first thing is I would write down, why am I switching TMSs in the first place? What even made me consider talking to a separate TMS vendor or having the conversation with myself? Why am I thinking about this? And the answer is probably because I identified some areas that I want to improve my business, or my current TMS provider hasn't been helping me get to my growth objectives, or my efficiency objectives, or my margin objectives. Writing those down at the beginning is really helpful because then when you're in the middle of the process and you're at the hard part, right? That's right in the middle is where you're always going like, okay, this is hard. Maybe I should have stayed where I was. The road forward looks hard. The road back looks hard. But continuing to move forward through that and reminding yourself at that point, I had issues with what I had before, and I have to give this a chance. I have to get through this, and then on the other side, reap the benefits.
It's always that middle part where you're sitting there going, what have I done? Is it too late to undo it? I don't want to do this anymore. It's hard.
Exactly. Yep. And that's the time where you really just got to finish the process and you know and and we try to have our team really support companies through the process so that it doesn't feel so heavy. But it is heavy, and the bigger the team that you have to support, the more people that feel that heaviness in the middle of the transition, and that's where the leaders of the organization really have to step up and remind everybody, look, we had challenges before. Once we get to the other side, let's really reevaluate and see, have those challenges been fixed? Are we in a different place? Is our company able to grow better? Are we more efficient? Are we showing better margins? What does it look like after we get through the transition?
Yeah, I think that knowing those reasons why, so that way when you have those moments of like, why are we doing this? This is a horrible idea, you can turn around and say, oh no, we're doing it because it took me 30 minutes to do one thing in this TMS, or I had to go to 10 different screens to get something done. So that's why we're doing it. It just really sucks right now that this is what we're doing and this is what we have to deal with. So I think that I like that idea of having those reasons why from the beginning. So that way, anytime it gets hard, you say, well, we had this and this is what we're going to have in the future,
Exactly.
which is also why your implementation is so important. And if you have someone that drops the ball on your implementation, that's not someone that you want to work with. You want to have someone that's ready and willing to help you when there are problems, because it's not if there are problems, it's when there are problems. And I think having someone that's as invested and dedicated as you is going to help immensely in making sure that you kind of have someone to hold your hand and, like you said, share the load when it gets really difficult, because there's going to be times where you're going to want to throw your computer out the window, but that's when they're like, no, it's okay, we're going to solve it this way. And I think that that cannot be kind of overstated enough.
Yeah, and it's never easy when you're switching TMS and your TMS vendor's telling you like, "Hey, well, have you considered changing this entire process?" And then you're sitting there and going, "Well, I mean, this process has been in place for a decade." And then, as a TMS vendor, you're saying, "Well, but have you thought about it? Because maybe there's a better way here." That's it doesn't matter how much better it is. It's a hard thing to get over, right? It's a hard thing to think about, like, okay, all right, I really do need to make a big change here, but that change is what's going to help me get to that next step, right? Because one of the things, the other side of that coin is, let's say we do decide to go through this transition of TMS, but we try to do everything the exact same way in the new TMS as we did it in the old TMS. Well, now you've really kind of shot yourself in the foot, right? You've taken away the reason that you decided to move. So that expectation and that preparedness for those changes as and how challenging they will be, and that you're going to have to push those through your organization, that you're going to have to convince people that change is fun and good, because none of us like it. It's just the way we're wired. It's not our fault, right? But that's such an important component of the process.
Oh, 100%. Change management, honestly, is to me one of the biggest things anytime you're doing any sort of big change in an organization, is just kind of letting people know about it early, keeping a lot of visibility, and just knowing that, like, it will get better. It's going to suck right now and it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay. And honestly, there's no going back. So buckle up. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
So that does bring us to pretty much the end of the episode today. And Mitch, you've been on a few times, so we've picked your brain on quite a few things. I know that you would like a quiet Wednesdays. So that being said, today's hot question for you is: would you rather go 100 years forward or backwards in time?
Yeah, so this is a really good one. All right, 100 years backwards is a little bit of a challenge because that puts us right in the middle of Prohibition. And I'm not really sure I'm okay with that. And then we've got like the Great Depression that went around there too. So it's a pretty tough time overall. However, being a gangster does kind of sound like fun. So, I mean, like the zoot suits and stuff, like, I don't know, this could be pretty cool. Um, so knowing what we're getting into going in the past, there's some pros and cons, but I think I'm ready to buckle up for the future, and I'm going for 100 years in the future because I think I'd rather be the guy who can't barely use a cell phone. Like I want to be that 100 years from now, and torturing like all the young people that are like, hey, like this is how you use your new smartphone. I want to be that guy. Um, and see what it looks like. So let's go to the future. Let's make this happen.
I like it. So you are king of the Jetsons, basically. You're ready to jump all in.
100%.
I love it. Although I do think that you might be able to give Al Capone a run for his money, but like a nice Al Capone. I don't know that you would be as into, like, some of Al's shady things.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if they're going to take away alcohol from all of us, we're going to have to smuggle it. I mean, it really isn't another option.
All right. Well, if anyone has their predictions about what could happen 100 years in the future, or if they have any questions about if switching TMSs is right for them, where can they find you outside the show?
You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. You can also find us at tie-software.com. And we'd be happy to help you and talk to you a little bit about how we can help get your TMS transitioned to something better.
Awesome. I love it. You guys are pretty much kind of the experts in the area of, making sure something's right for you and, making sure people are taken care of, whether it's through Ty or someone else. But honestly, let's be honest, it's mostly through Ty.
Appreciate that. We try very hard to help everybody out. So thank you for that, Mary. Appreciate the time today.
You can find Check All the Podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves shows, and don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.